Hello again, and welcome back to our web series about athletic training in the occupational setting. Thanks for joining us again here on day 4. Please feel free to check out any of the past episodes from this week. They are all available on the YouTube channel right where you found this one. Today's topic is about the challenges of working in the occupational setting. So just throwing it out there, have any of you seen any trends among our people or anyone else within the occupational setting as some difficulties that they face?
Well, I think again, the example I give that I've experienced with several team members is like training has grown. Programs, even in sports and college settings, have grown. We have more resources when you talk about strength conditioning specialists, dietitians, and other personnel. But often in a lot of athletic training settings, we had to wear a lot of hats. Everybody came to us as the main resource for something. And in this environment, while we can be seen as a new resource and someone that hopefully can provide a lot of answers, we don't have to wear as many hats. We can really focus to the services that we provide, and we have to keep in mind that there are other resources on site to help us and collaborate with. So we have, environmental health and safety specialists that are there, sometimes ergonomic specialists that are there, the managers, personnel directors, medical services, a physician, a nurse on site. So we don't have to be the end all be all. We don't have to, again, wear as many hats and do everything that maybe we had to do in kind of the traditional setting with our athletes. We can focus on our services and leave and collaborate with others and help other people get to other resources. Sometimes the best help we can provide is that referral and get them to somebody that can spend more quality time or focus on a particular problem that we can't necessarily help with or be the best to help with that.
Yeah, and I think kind of to build off of, Andy, your point about there are all these other people around. You are in this business setting that has other staff available, other vendors available. But I think that we tend to see people who maybe we have this athletic setting where we transition over into this and we don't feel that we have the ability to speak to someone who maybe seems a little larger than life, when really we're the experts. Our customers, no matter what level they're at, no matter how long they've been at a company, they don't know what you know as an athletic trainer. And they are really looking to you to tell them those things. So really going in confidently, no matter if you're talking to an employee on the shop floor, a colleague, or the manager of the plant, go in there confidently because you know what you're doing and we trust that you know what you're doing. And most of the time you come out wowing them and you didn't even have to do anything too crazy to do it.
Yeah, that's well said. And I would add that, we got to look at ourselves too as not the necessarily the all solution or the answer to everything, but we're the missing piece to a puzzle that exists within this client environment. And so when you have a missing piece, not everything can function as properly as it can. And when we can add what we can do to this culture, to this working in, the operations, everything else can work a little bit better. So knowing our role and knowing how we fit into that puzzle, take some time to learn and to understand. But again, we don't have to do everything. We can complement what everything else is going and make everybody else more efficient, and no other than the employee, the human body, where we have a lot of expertise and help them do their jobs better. We can provide that missing piece.
Yeah, when you said knowing your role, Andy, that really resonated with me. I think one of the challenges that some of our folks have in this environment too is that it might be their first exposure to working in a union shop too, and just really understanding the structure of a union, the hierarchy of it. The fact that, union and management is almost based upon having a little bit of strife in that relationship, working towards the greater good for the employees. And so that's an extra layer for us to understand. Sometimes, I think if you joined us in an earlier session, we talked a lot about patience, and having extra layers involved sometimes, feels like it slows us down, like we've got this solution and we can help right away. But, we got to move it through the right channels. We got to get all of the right people involved. And sometimes that means working with other people's schedules so that we can go out and assess a job together with our union counterparts that are there on site. And if we do that, though, the end result is that everybody's on board. And I think it's worth the time and the effort and the patience that we all put into it, because we know that we've built a lot of advocates along the way, and that the outcome is going to be the best for the employee.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's a really key point. I always think of us as Switzerland, right? Because our sole mission is to help people. And often we get to be that gap filler that Andy was talking about, where sometimes people don't even realize that they have the same mission, right? One side of the house wants people to stay healthy and wants to protect them, and another side of the house wants their business to be strong and healthy, and they need healthy people for that. And we get to be the ones in the middle, those gap fillers, that little sort of veritable Switzerland that says, we're all on the same page here, so let's take that time. And we get to be the team builders as a result of that. And that does require that patience to know that I've got to get the network together. Let me build the network around me to carry this forward.
Another challenge that I think sometimes is a stumbling block, and once you understand it, you can definitely use it to become a positive, is the sales side of it. In a traditional setting, if you are the new athletic trainer in the school and the coach says, oh, you hurt yourself, go see the athletic trainer, the athletes, your patients, they know what an athletic trainer is, and they know that you can help. They might not know your name because you're the new person compared to last year, or that doesn't matter. Here, especially if you're starting up a site that hasn't had an athletic trainer before or hasn't had work fit, when you tell an employee or you tell a manager, like, here, I'm an athletic trainer, I'm here to help, that they don't know what that means. And so you have to be able to sell our profession and sell what you do, and then sell it to different sides of the house so they can all see that we are here to help and we are here to complete your mission of having that healthy workforce.
Another stumbling block, or just like a mental flip that people have to make, is sometimes they get intimidated thinking about injury prevention or being really proactive. Because that comfort wheelhouse is, I'm responding, right? I think Mike said that the other day. You've got somebody coming to you for help. You're responding to their need that they hurt. And it wasn't, and this is quite a while back now, but I was talking with somebody who said, I have to study injury prevention. And I was like, what do you mean you have to study injury prevention, right? Or some people that, again, I can think of some folks a few years ago who were like, boy, if I could just put my hands on it, I could fix it, right? And a lot of our sites and a lot of our clients, we can do that. We can operate in that first aid realm, and we can operate even in a full rehab realm. But my challenge back to them is always, yeah, but if you send them back to do the same job the same way with the same bad body mechanics, you're going to have to fix it again in 3 months, and fix it again in maybe another 6, and fix it again and fix. So take all of your knowledge that you would use in your traditional training room, your clinic, being able to treat them, give it to them on the front end, right? That's your injury prevention. I know, Mike, you say this all the time, right? If you're talking to somebody and they're already hurt and you've been with them for a while, you've almost failed to do your job, right? We don't want to leave people hanging until they have pain. So that sometimes is an interesting and a little bit surprising mental flip and roadblock for people. But once the light bulb goes on, then it's like, oh, and I've got this technique and this knowledge, and I can pull from all these areas, and I can go teach them this.
And Kimber, I think that you touch on really what is a very difficult point for athletic trainers coming into the occupational setting, which is working with OSHA guidelines. I think you just really hit the nail on the head on how to do that. Is we should be working with the people before they have an issue. I think athletic trainers really struggle in flipping that switch on how what we do falls completely in alignment with OSHA. Sometimes it's hard for us to see that when we want to give someone a stretch or whatever it might be. But once you start to think about it, you realize I can help this person easily while still working in the guidelines set forth that protect the employee and protect the employer.
Let me ask you this question. So I know that, there's you have your traditional athletic training, and then you have, our on-site. what would you say is the challenge when you talk about documentation, right? Because we know that there's two different realms of documentation and how that looks. Is that a challenge to a lot of these athletic trainers coming into this? I would imagine.
Well, I think documentation, I was going to say, I think documentation is a challenge for any healthcare practitioner, right? Because, you know, your value a little bit is based upon having a very full schedule. And in our world too, our people are very mobile out in the plant setting. So you have to be very, very deliberate about carving out time to complete your documentation, because you can easily fill up a whole day of just service delivery. And, you know, one of the things that I always tell our folks in onboarding and mentoring is that the service isn't complete until it's documented, right? You got to look at it from the employee perspective, right? It goes back to our mission, make health personal, right? You know, you would never want some employee to come up to you and say, hey, can I get a copy of my records? You know, because they're assuming that you're documenting the service with them. And then you have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't been documenting anything, right? You know, that service is not complete until it's documented.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, when you do set forth the time to complete your documentation, just think about it as you're doing this for yourself, but most importantly, you're doing it for the employee. A lot of times we're dealing with people who've been hurt on the job. And we hope that we can help and that we fix it forever. But the chances of somebody then re-injuring themselves doing a different job or a task that isn't normal and hurting that same injury, it is a lot of times they become, you know, workers' compensation claims or labor and industry claims. And I release records for WorkFit, so I'm doing it at least a handful of times a month. From states that are subpoenaing records to lawyers' offices that are there fighting for employees to make sure that they are compensated for an injury that they had on the job. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we are documenting everything as truth. Right now, today, what just happened from my appointment that I had with them 10 minutes ago, and capturing it all in detail in our documentation.
Yeah, that's a
great
really
point, Candace.
Yeah. I know sometimes I talk to people who are about to graduate and they're like, oh, I'm going to be free of documentation. And we all just chuckle, right? We all go, no, you're just starting your documentation journey. You're going to be documenting for the rest of your life. So, you know, practice being really thorough, right? I tell somebody, if I asked you about this person a year from now, what could you tell me based solely on your note, right? You have to be that thorough and more. And so, but when you recognize that it's for you and it's for the employee, then you know the benefit, and then you not only do you not mind, but you understand the reason and you appreciate the time that you sow into it to do it right.
All right, well, let's turn it over to some more of our WorkFit family to talk about their experiences and how they've persevered through some of their pain points in this transition.
The successes of this environment really is the ability to connect with a great customer. Being able to work with our customer and be able to show value of the athletic trainer is something that is really unique to this profession. The challenge is there's a couple of them. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is working in somebody else's house can be really challenging. Being able to take the WorkFit model and bring it to somebody else's work environment, you have to know a lot about that environment. You have to take time to explore it.
I think one of the biggest frustrations that comes when you're working with a large corporation is there's a process flow to be able to get things done. And so it can feel like you work really hard and then it doesn't go anywhere. So you don't see those little traction places along the way. And so that can be frustrating.
So most definitely the positives would be the amount of resources, amount of structured resources. You've got a lot of support from your coworkers. You get immediate feedback on performance. Clarity of expectations is very high, so you know what you need to do, and you know what is expected of you, and you're given the tools pretty consistently to fulfill those expectations.
Gosh, the positives of working in a structured business environment. I mean, there are a lot. I think the frustrations now are the larger the company that we work for as a client or a customer, it's harder to get that ship to steer in the right direction that we want to take it. But that's also a positive because we get to learn the business side of healthcare and the business that isn't in our traditional education. So I think that's actually a really big positive for me working in this setting, is that you get to apply the business side of healthcare here with athletic training and with WorkFit. And it teaches you a lot on how to be a better leader, a better communicator, a better business person, how to seek out opportunities, how to take advantage of everything that's in front of you in a positive manner, not only to excel yourself, but really to excel your team and your business, and our ultimate goal of just making health personal.
Working within the business environment, you end up with some limitations of how fast things will go. There's a lot of times you got to get buy-off from multiple levels of leaders, and they're not just focused on just that one aspect. So you run into a frustration there. The positive is when they're actually working with a program like WorkFit, they really do have intentions for their employees to make a bigger impact. They're really looking at wanting to see people do better. So a lot of times, if you can reframe things in a way that they understand how it's a value to the business, they're going to buy in and support you and help champion your causes.
I think a negative can be that things are changing so quickly. You might make a really great relationship with, one manager or one group of employees, and then next week your manager is different and your employees have been changed to a new area, or production being the goal of these, businesses that we work for. Sometimes your initiatives can get lost in the shuffle, but also that kind of lends you to that adaptability concept where you find the ways to then be helpful in those situations. And I think the pro, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is you do have a very set parameter of the types of work that you can do and the types of ways that you can be helpful, which I find I like the organization and the structure of that, because I don't feel overwhelmed that I'm not making return to work decisions. I'm not trying to be the one resource that is going to be the end all be all for these employee problems or employee injuries, but I can hone in my skills in a very targeted way to then benefit their business cases.
One challenge I've had working in the business environment is that the managers and my customer really see things in black and white, very data driven. They look at numbers, charts, data, production rates, and it's hard to work with people and kind of show them what we're doing is working with people and that people are not just numbers. We're also trying to prove our return on our investment, and it's hard to prove that we're reducing injuries when injuries don't happen. But once we do have their buy-in, once they see the benefit of the services we offer, then they're sending people to us left and right, and we get really, really busy. So finding the return on investment and getting that manager buy-in is key.
We preach self-care so much to our employees and whatnot, but in those first couple months, there wasn't a lot of self-care coming from myself. So I would definitely say forgive yourself. Remember that you can't pour out to others with an empty cup.
Be proactive, out there on the floor and saying, okay, what's going to hurt if you keep doing things like this, and being able to take that approach of education and getting people to change things about their body mechanics before they start hurting.
I would have just taken a little bit more time to focus on learning a little bit more of how the customer's business was set up, So you understood who the key decision makers were.
Industrial athletic training has definitely changed my philosophy and my view of patient care. I really understand the value of hands-on modalities to make patients feel better. But also at the same time, I think education goes a long way as well.
So I had a very kind of focused idea of what the human body did, and it was athletic based, or at least physically active based. And then you come into a setting where maybe these people don't do anything physically active outside of their jobs. Maybe they've never exercised before. Maybe they've never, heard of stretching or, self-care techniques, or you have to kind of reframe the way that you approach people, because you have no idea what their health background is. You have no idea what their expectations of themselves are. Just realizing that it's not all about being an athlete, but just being kind of a whole person.